Indigenous men are 3 times more likely to commit suicide than non-Indigenous men. Suicide rates are highest for Indigenous youth and young adults aged 15 to 24. In this episode, John Kruger, a former chief of Penticton Indian Band, sits down with us and shares his story of strength and resilience in overcoming intergenerational trauma. John speaks on the impacts and trauma in his life caused by residential schools. John's story is of healing and a message of hope for a better future. This is in regard to men's mental health.
Hello, my name is Jonathan Kruger. I'm from Penticton, BC, Okanagan Nation, and I am 50 years old, and I have 4 children, a son and 3 daughters, and they are 25, 23, 21, and almost 2 years old. And I'm very honored to be here to talk about men's health, Indigenous men's health. And I wanted to talk about myself growing up. I grew up in a community in Penticton here, born and raised. Really happy with, overall how I was raised. I love my family. I come from a big family in our community, the Krugers. And I'm proud of some of the things that they taught me, and I teach that to my kids. And our families are really strong at for hunting and gathering. We're not much into ceremonies too much, and that's just what we were taught. I want to talk about the tough things in our communities, the tough things that I've experienced in my life is poverty and intergenerational trauma. Everybody's been talking about intergenerational trauma a lot lately, and a big part of that is from residential schools. There's a dark history in our relationship with Canada. I've heard stories from elders talking about our first relationship with the settlers when they first came here. And the first contact that we had in the Okanagan territory was disease. That was our first contact. And we suffered many losses. And then the settlers came in and we took them in. It was a beautiful relationship. And then history happened, and there was a lot of dark times. Residential school, as my uncle Pierre would say, residential school was the nuclear bomb. And there's fallout from a nuclear bomb, and that fallout is called, what he says, is the intergenerational trauma that we suffer. And a lot of people don't understand that, and I'll try to break it down as much as I can. The bomb happened, residential school happened, a lot of stuff happened. Everybody's starting to find out about the truth about that, and it's terrible. But what happened when families left the residential school, they started teaching those bad things and doing those bad things to their own family members in their communities. And it's really torn our communities up for generations. And the fallout that I've experienced through residential schools from my family is physical abuse, mental abuse. You have to be tough. You have to, don't cry. And there wasn't any really, there was always tough love. It wasn't really like lots of hugs and love. It was just really stern and tough. And growing up, I've probably been in about over 200 fights in my life. And I'm not saying that's good. It's just it's happened, and and it's not healthy, and it's not right. And I got a lot of scars, and it doesn't prove anything. And I did some things personally, counseling, but I don't want to get into that. Counseling's great, and one of the things I learned from that is hurt people hurt, and I was hurt, and I'm learning not to hurt. And so yeah, we got beat by everything. We were told to be tough and don't cry. Some some of my friends and their families in our communities suffer from that fallout of sexual abuse, and it's a really tough subject to talk about. And a lot of people try to hide that, and it's not normal to do that. It's not safe to do that. We need to we need to encourage them to talk about that and stop it. We have to stop normalizing this hurt and pain, and it takes a lot of courage. And that fallout of that pain and that hurt that we're teaching each other generations after generations, and we don't know how to deal with that. That's one of the biggest problems we have right now in Indigenous communities. Uh, that hurt and that pain, it messes up your identity. You have identity crises, and you have high rates of suicide, violence. Um, all these are attributes for murdered, missing women. Um, all of these things happen. There's violence against women. The alarming rates of people dying. I have family that died. I have family that's been murdered. I've seen poverty. I grew up in poverty. I watched my dad be a hard worker. He's always been a hard worker. And I seen him develop a logging company that was very successful. And we were living a really good life when I was young. And he was just starting to be, successful. He had 3 sawmills. He had all this. Amazing loaders, equipment. And in the 1980s, reservations don't have insurance. They don't even have building codes, housing building codes. And somebody burnt my dad's sawmills down, lost everything. It's crushed. My dad quit drinking alcohol for 8 years. And he was crushed and he was hurt. And I remember him telling me, people still think he's a bully and an asshole and a mean. So he said he was going to be the biggest, meanest asshole that they expect him to be. He said, so I'm going to sell drugs. And he did. And one day, someone came into his house and shot him. And that hurt me. I'm still hurt. Not even 10 years later, there was a triple homicide in my community, and my brother got shot and he died. And our community came together, and I'm grateful for our community. I love my community. And said, maybe we need to do something different. This isn't working. Maybe we should start looking north and south to us. West Bank First Nation and Oswego Indian Band are doing really well in economic development. And maybe we need to do economic development. And I had a great job working for the Ministry of Environment. And I got so focused and determined, I didn't even want to be in politics. And But I knew that if we can create some kind of economy and get stuff to help our families become healthy, um, and get out of poverty, that some people's lives will change. Drugs and alcohol, they're always going to be there. I don't care if you're the most powerful president in the world, drugs and alcohol are always going to be in all of our families' lives. And it's a substance that controls everybody, no matter whether you like it or not. I'm not going to get righteous about that or anything. I'm just being straight up about that. But poverty is real. Poverty hurts. And poverty is a huge attribute for pain and suffering. And if someone can get up, like my grandma used to always say, idle hands are a dangerous thing. So we need to get our people to get their hands busy again. And I felt that economic development was a good thing, so people can get out of bed and actually do something they're proud of, do something they're happy about, and stay busy. With economic development, it helps. We built in PIB, Penticton Indian Band. It helped build us a school. We have kids up there learning their own language now. We have a health center. We have an amazing staff up there that takes care of our families, especially during these COVID times. They're doing over and beyond stuff for our families. And 10 years ago, we didn't have any of that. And you know what? There's 634 bands in Canada, and less than a quarter of those bands are successful. So over 3/4 of our communities across Canada, there's a lot of suffering. The statistics on suicide, on murdered missing women, on deaths, diseases, all of those are skyrocket. And this trend needs to curve down. And I want to be real, and people might be upset with some of the words that I'm talking about, but we all feel the effects of suicide, all of our families. And none of our families want to experience that. The first time I experienced suicide, I was, I think, just about 6.5 years old. I remember that day. My family probably would get mad at me talking about that, but I've experienced it. I watched my auntie die. My other auntie was giving us a bath. There was about 5 of us, and I heard a gunshot. And we all heard the gunshot, and my auntie come running in the bedroom, and we heard a lot of crying and screaming, and I got out of the tub, and I went over there and asked what was going on, and my auntie Sandra was crying, and she said, I'm sorry, and I don't want to die. And my auntie Blinky was like saying, I love you, and it was really emotional, and I was confused as a little kid. And I remember my auntie saying, get out of here, go back in the bathtub. And I did, but I kept going back to look. And that was my first experience of watching somebody pass away. And I'll never forget that. And I have so many friends that lost loved ones. So many good people gone. And we hurt each other. We murder each other. We suffer. We talk bad about each other. And that has to stop. We have to see each other's gifts. There's some amazing families in my community. We're not ceremonial, but I'm so proud of the people that sing the songs and do the ceremonies. You know, those are our leaders in our communities for spiritual stuff, cultural stuff. My family's really good at gathering food and getting elk and moose and deer. My job is done with my son. He gets 15 deer a year, elk and a moose every year, and we get 300 salmon a year. You know, and we do good stuff. There's other families that don't do that, and that's okay. There's great artists in our communities, and you know, they share that beauty. You know, pan-Indianism is a real thing. I don't think it's okay. Some people want to talk bad about it. The medicine wheel is not ours, but I love it. If it's going to help people, if it's going to help our nation, power is not ours, but our people embrace it. It makes us feel good when they get out there and dance. You know, there's so many things. There's so much education. We have to share stories in the schools. You know, with the government not sharing our history and trying to hide the residential schools, well, that's going to come out. That Truth and Reconciliation is going to come out. I don't want to get talking about politics about that, but this relationship has to change. And today, right now, 2021, the rest of the world is watching Canada. And they're appalled. And their heart got kicked in the gut too. My grandma told me once when I was a chief, I was in politics for 17 years, and some of our ancestors would come back, and I would be stressed out and worry. My grandma said, those ancestors came back for a reason. These children that we're finding are our ancestors. And they're coming back and they're telling the world things need to change. And this cycle that was put upon us, this nuclear bomb and that fallout, will have to settle somehow. And those waves of it is that intergeneration, and I believe in my heart there's so many gifted, strong people out there that are helping our communities. They're talking, they're getting up, they have that courage to get up and talk. If you're listening to this, don't stop. We need your help. And guys, it's okay to cry. I was one of the toughest guys around, and I never cried. And I'm learning. I have 3 daughters, and they deserve to have a beautiful, wonderful life. I love my grandmas. I love my mom. I love my aunties. And a lot of this stuff has to stop. And the women, you need to, I know you're hurting too, but you have to find a way in your heart to help hold men up too. They go through a lot. We're all hurting. We're all suffering. And we have to denormalize this. We have to denormalize this hiding our feelings. And if this triggers you, I hope it triggers you in a good way, the words that I'm saying. It's going to take a long time, but it's going to be okay. And we do a lot of stuff. We talk about 7 generations, and we do a lot of things in a good way. But we also have to do that 7 generations of the hard work in here. One of my favorite words in our language is stima spoos. That's one of my favorite words. What's on your heart? If we talk about what's on our heart, some people might not be able to process it right away, but at least you're speaking from your heart and not getting stuck in your mind. And if we continue doing that, we'll do some good things together. And my mom said that when they found our ancestors, the kids coming back from residential schools, at alarming numbers, and there's going to be more. My mom said that she doesn't want to see us just mourning and then this subject changing. My mom wants to see action. She wants our leaders, all the leaders, to come together, and she wants us to reshape the future. I really like that word, reshape our future together. Those are her words, those are her wishes. She's a survivor. And I truly believe that we can do that. It's going to take a lot of hard work. It's going to take a lot of patience. It's going to take a lot of work. There is accountability. There is amends. There is action. I'm just going to say this. And this is a solution in my eyes, a part of it. I always say attributes. There's attributes in everything. It's not a one-all thing that's going to solve everything. But if you took a language and culture from our people for over 150 years, you should be investing a culture and language into our communities for 150 years. And I was looking at a treasury report, and I don't know the numbers, but like just for example, Canada gives Quebec like $300 million for language. Why can't you do that for Indigenous people? Little solutions like this, little steps. Put our stories, put our history into the curriculums of all the schools. Get our grandmas and our uncles and aunties to come and talk to the kids and share stories. Share some crafting, painting, whatever. There's some good things that we can do together, and that can, the people that are hurt right now, they might be hurt, but if we focus on our kids can grow up and have those better lives, and they don't have to have the baggage. And I'm sorry for saying that, but it's true. There's some people that are so hurt that I don't think they're going to heal. I'm just being real. There's a lot of broken people. But I know for a fact those broken people would love to see our children grow up in a better life than they did. I grew up, I pushed myself to be a hard worker to make sure that my kids got way more stuff than I did. It's just a given. So, justice has to happen too. Horrific things happen in the rest of the world. And other countries stepped in as independent things and created that justice, and that needs to happen here. You know, for far too long, Canada has been telling other countries how great they are. Well, the rest of the world is watching you too now, Canada, and we need to have people from other countries come in here and help that process of that reconciliation too. So justice is going to be a part of that. I hear the chiefs, I see the chiefs, I see the leaders, and that's a part of that reconciliation that I see. And genocide is a part of our history, but I believe we can change that. And the pain and suffering that we experience from all the attributes. I was telling one of my friends, I want to share a story about this. As a part of those attributes, you know, in our history, in the wars, my grandpa went to war, my uncles went to war, and some of them got disenfranchised. And they took this land just right up here. Canada took this land for all the veterans. And they couldn't even live side by side with their bros. They said, no, you go live on the reserve. And they took that land back. We ended up coming up with a specific claim on that. And but still, taking reserve land away from First Nations to give to the war veterans, and then won't allow the Native war veterans to join to live with their bros. That hurt my grandpa. Indigenous people were the highest race that joined wars. And they got treated like that. And that's an attribute too. That's that relationship that we've had with Canada. You know, there's so many attributes, and it's so hard to talk in a short amount of time on all these attributes about that's hurt us. So when you add up all these things and just talk about them, it's going to take a long time to process all that kind of stuff. But I just want to talk about these things and just put it out there. And everybody has their own story of their hurt and pain through their own families, through their own generations of families. And they also have good stories as well. And I want to see those statistics change for the better. And I believe we can do that.
So historically, when I was looking at the data, how did Aboriginal communities support and guide and love through mental health issues in their communities back in the day? Do you have any information or storytelling that you can give us on that subject?
That's a good question. You know, the stories that I heard is everybody had a job, everybody had a strength, everybody supported each other. We had two-spirited people in our communities growing up forever, and I'll use this as an example because they're not treated very good. Two-spirited people are not treated very good in Canada overall. I think in a history, and it's starting to get better, which is good. But in our nation, and our nations, from the stories I heard, is they've always were fine with that, and they were okay with that, and they supported that. And everybody had a job. Everybody cared about each other. Everybody, like there was the hunters, there was the fishers, there was the people that did the clothing, there was people that were runners. that communicated. Did you know our nation is huge? It's 69,000 kilometers in circumference. We had people that's all their job was to relay messages, and then we had riders. We were the first people out of the Indigenous people going north from in BC that were actually famous for being horse riders. Like I don't want to say horsemen because it's not. Our women are great riders as well, and we were great horse people. And the other nations were very envious of us for being horse people, and we were strong warriors with the horses more than the other nations, and that's why we did a lot of pretty amazing things. And so we supported our with mental health. I don't think it was really much of a. We never addressed it as mental health because of the jobs that we did and the things that we had to do, and everybody supported each other by that. So it's hard to explain, but in the community, everybody did everything. So the hunters did the hunting. The women in our community, from what I was told, the women are the leaders in our communities, and they're the ones that made things happen and get things done. They were the ones that were, we just had to go out and do our job and get things done and keep our hands busy. Yeah. And so things were. We had to move. We had to move with the animals. We had to move with the plants. The weather, the seasons have made us go follow the food, and there was people that all did their jobs. So I think we were all busy, and there was nobody taking advantage of anybody then. So, and then when you talk about colonization, a lot of things started falling apart.
I think what I find so inspiring about the community stories is in the beginning, it was playing to everyone's strengths. Yes. So you weren't like this world that we live in now doesn't play necessarily people's strengths. You're respected upon education level and monetary levels. You're not respected that maybe that's not your strength.
Yeah, we definitely still have those strengths, but we need to acknowledge those more. I think that's a part of our healing, and there's some beautiful artists out there. There's people that make beautiful regalias, traditional clothing. There's amazing people out there that build traditional bows and spears still, and I use those, and I help support so many people with food, elk, moose, deer. Now I don't. Now that I work so much, my son's picking up that more, and so when there's a funeral, like that's one of his strengths and there's a group of people out there that do all the hunting, so there's more hunters like in our family than other families, and that's okay. There's more strengths in their families, and I think we need to acknowledge that again.
One of the questions that Takesha and I really wanted to ask you was, what advice do you want to give to men and women, because we have spoken about men and women who are struggling with what we label as mental illness in our society? What do you want to leave them with on how they can access support, love, or compassion, specifically in your community, but as well to the ones that aren't, because you do accept all people?
That's a good question, and thank you for giving me this time to talk about that. I'm talking to my son right now. He's growing up, and he's an amazing young man. And when he graduated, he was a valedictorian. And he wanted to do all these things, And I was I'm proud of him for that. But in his schooling, his he did want to do that. He changed his mind, and we had a good. He had the courage to say, "Dad, I'm only doing that because I want to make you happy." And he said, "I don't want to do this. I'm not gonna. I would be happy doing that." And I said, "Son, thank you for talking to me about that." And I said, "So what do you want to do?" And he's like, "Well, I don't know." I said, "That's okay." So what I'm going to say to you, what I said to my son is, I'm going to say this to any young man or a man. It doesn't matter how old you are, and around, is do what you want to do that makes you happy. Get out of bed and do something that makes you happy instead of being miserable about a job that you're not going to be happy with. Because if you're miserable at a job that you're not happy with, well, that's going to filter into your relationships. It's going to filter into your family. That's not healthy. Do what makes you happy. And he's like, "Well, what do I do then?" I said, "You know what? I'm challenging you to go and do like 20 different jobs. Find one that makes you happy. And it's not all about the money either. Don't get a job because you're making 6 figures a year. Do a job that makes you happy. If you want to be working at a gas station and that makes you happy, right on. We need those people there. You know, I appreciate everybody at Tim Hortons. I love Tim Hortons. You know, and if you want to be there and that's your career, right on. Good for you." And so I said, whatever's in your heart, whatever makes you happy. And so anybody that wants to do anything for, don't be afraid to try different things. You'll never know. And in my journey, I found out what makes me want to do things. And like I said, I didn't even want to be in leadership. I didn't, but I knew what. I got so addicted to wanting a change because of the poverty. I got into politics. I never had a good time being a chief. I got beat up so bad. Even though I created so much change, it was always about the change for me. And then today I'm working with a great company, and I found out what my journey is. My journey is Indigenous prosperity. And so now I'm going across Canada helping other nations become millionaires so they can create their own health centers and their schools and their own daycares and having cultural programs, language programs. I want to see that. I want to see mental health being addressed in the communities. And the only way you're going to do that is getting out of poverty and creating that sustainability for your families. And that's what makes me driven. And so whatever drives anybody that wants to do something, go for it.
We end our segments with everyone we speak to with the same question, and it's a question that either makes someone squirm or they love it. And that question is, can you tell us one of the things that you love about yourself the most?
The one thing I love about myself most, I think one of the things that I love about myself most is I make time for my friends, my family, and for myself. And people either love me or they don't like me because of my brutally honest, straight up. I'm straight up, and that's what I love about myself. I'm as blunt as a soccer ball, and I rub people the wrong way, and I also people love me for being me, and that's what makes me happy. And I love my kids, and my kids make me want to be better. So that's what I love about myself, I think. To answer this question right off the top of my head. So that's what's on my heart is my children and a better future. And if I can get out of bed to make a better future for them, that's what I have to take care of myself to make that happen. My dad died in 95, and me and my mom weren't very close until 2002. Yeah, now she's like in my life is just about every day. So, and the first thing I did is I went over to her and I said, why did you abandon us? Why did you leave? And I heard her story. My dad threatened her life. And she was scared of my dad. And she went to residential school. And that's one of the reasons why is you get that fear put in you. And so so whenever I went to try to see her, she's like, what do you want? And it hurt her for saying that, but she didn't want my dad to know that I was around. My dad said, if you ever come around my kids, he'll kill you. And so, yeah, so that's part of the residential school thing. And so I said, well, I want you to do one thing for me. She's like, what's that? I said, I want you to call me once a week and tell me you love me. And she thought that was the strangest thing ever.
Magical.
I said, we don't need to talk, we don't need to know anything. That's what I want. Because I grew up with abandonment issues and I wasn't very good with women because of that. And, but I wasn't a very good role model either. He had a gazillion girlfriends, so. But anyways, she started calling me once a week. She's like, uncomfortable, hi. I was like, oh, hey, Mom. I just wanted to tell you I love you. I love you too, Mom. Thank you. Click. Then the next week, we started talking a little bit more, and then pretty soon she calls me, hey, son, I love you. What are you doing today? And you want some, fruit? You want some vegetables? You want some? I come in to drop off some lasagna for you, and she just it's constantly tons of stuff, and our relationship has grown so much since then. So, and I'm so happy to be in my life now. So.